So, jay-ruud, what lovable book are we talking about today?
Well, I'll give you a hint. Candy-covered chocolate.
Okay. No clue.
Say nothing.
Welcome to Between the Covers, where I, Stacey Margaret Jones, discuss lovable books with my lovable husband, jay-ruud, author of Treasure of Sherwood.
And I answer her back. She is my lovable wife, Stacey Margaret Jones, the author of Mr. Catherine.
That's right. All right. Well, I obviously need more hints.
Well, I knew that was a hard one. But here's another hint. The Trials of Arabella.
Okay. Hint me.
Hint number 3. Bryony.
Oh, Atonement.
It is Atonement.
Oh my gosh, that book is so good.
I know. That's why it's on my list.
So we are discussing Atonement
By Ian McEwan.
Okay. So tell us, besides me, who else thinks this is a book of note or a lovable book?
Well, first of all, Ian McEwan won the Booker Prize for Amsterdam.
Right.
He did not win it for Atonement. And everybody who has read his oeuvre, you, I believe, are a McEwan completist.
I am a McEwan completist.
Everybody knows that Atonement is his best novel by way far. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2001. It lost to The True History of the Kelly Gang, which was an Australian book by Peter Carey, which is a very decent book. But it ain't no Atonement. It was named on Time Magazine's list of the 100 best novels since 1923. The Observer had it on its list of the greatest world novels. It placed number 15 on the BBC list of the 100 greatest British novels. And most recently, in the New York Times list of the 100 best books of the 21st century, it placed as number 15 on that list.
Okay.
So many a person loves this book.
So this is part of your project of your master list of all the great book lists and reading through it and then cultivating a list of your own of lovable books, which leaves out the good for you books that aren't that pleasant to read. Is that correct? Did I summarize that correctly?
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's
right,
kind of the criterion.
Yes. I think I read it because I was reading a lot from that Time magazine list. That's how I discovered McEwan and became a McEwan completist, which just means that you try to read everything that person writes. So all of his novels. It's interesting to think about, what authors are we completist about? And he definitely is one of mine. Let's have the down and dirty summary. No spoilers.
No, you really can't.
It's hard. This is challenging, I think.
But you can't give the end of this one away or there's no point in reading it. Well, there's a point in reading it, but it's in 4 parts. The first part is, sets everything up. It takes place on a day in 1935 at the estate of Bryony Tallis, who's a 13-year-old girl, and her sister Cecilia. They own they're members of a family that owns a fairly large estate. It's an exciting day because their brother's coming home and their cousins are coming to visit them because their cousins' parents are getting a divorce. And another important character is Robbie Turner, who is the son of the family's cleaning lady. But he's somebody who their father has taken notice of, and he's paid for him to go to Cambridge. And he and Cecilia are in Cambridge at the same time. Cecilia comes back with a 3rd in English. He comes back with a 1st, and he's getting ready to go to medical school.
He's upwardly mobile.
He is very upwardly mobile.
Which is difficult to do in Britain in some ways because of the nobility and the hierarchy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He can be all of these things and they can take an interest in him. But in many ways, he could never be their equal.
Yeah, that's true. The real crux of the novel happens at night when Bryony's cousin, who's 2 years older than her, I think she's 15, she goes off and they can't find her. And everybody in the house is looking for her. The brother has brought a friend of his along who is the owner of a company that's just invented this candy-covered chocolate that's they think they're going to make millions out of.
And they're very rich.
They're very rich. They're going to get the government to put it in soldiers, kits and things. Anyway, everybody's out looking for the cousin. When Bryony goes to a kind of deserted little part of the estate, she sees somebody with the cousin, and the person runs off, and she's sure it was Robbie. And the cousin has been basically raped. They get back. Bryony says Robbie did it. Everybody believes her because it couldn't have been any of them. It had to have been the low-class guy.
Exactly. And
he gets convicted solely on the basis of Bryony's testimony. And
this is a down and dirty summary. So
okay, it's a down and dirty summary. So that's the down and dirty.
Yeah.
The second part of it is Robbie in the army in World War II. And he's making his way to Dunkirk, where the evacuation is going to take place. He helps these two he's an enlisted man. He's a private, even though he's got this Cambridge degree, but he's been let out of jail basically if he volunteers for the army.
Right.
He gets these two kind of hapless corporals to where they're going for the evacuation. He's wounded. That's the second part. Third part, Cecilia, who is cut off. Cecilia and Robbie, they've been in love.
Right.
And there's been a sexual tension between them and throughout the whole first part.
Which is also something I think Bryony witnesses.
Yes, and she seems to have a kind of adolescent crush on Robbie. So there's something about his relationship with her sister that upsets her.
Well, she sees it and doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
Because she's too young to understand it.
That is true.
Right. So Cecilia
is working as a nurse in London during the war. And Bryony has decided she's going to work as a nurse too. And at this point, she's trying to kind of make up for what she did, because she realizes she was wrong and that it wasn't Robbie. In fact, she now realizes who it was. She actually realizes who did do it, and I won't tell you that because it's a spoiler.
That's right.
She meets the two of them at Cecilia's apartment. They are not happy with her. And they really don't want to forgive her.
Right.
But she promises she'll do anything to make up with it. Then comes the surprise.
Right.
Part 4.
And you're not going to talk about that.
Well, just let me just
Watch
say
it.
I'm not going to tell you anything. Bryony has become a famous writer. And the fourth part is about her talking about her latest book 40 years later.
Right. Well, as you were talking, I was, of course, picturing the movie that was made from Atonement.
Yeah, I think anybody who's seen the movie can't help but picture that.
Keira Knightley, Saoirse Riordan, right? Benedict Cumberbatch is in it as well. He is the chocolate magnate.
I didn't remember that.
Oh, yes. Juno from, what's her name? From the soccer show, The Coach.
Oh.
She's in it. You'll recognize lots of people are in it. Very familiar faces are in it. So I was thinking about that all during the summary. So it's not a long book.
No.
And yet it's really richly written, right? Why did you put it on your lovable list?
Largely because of the ending, which we can't talk about. It has a really startling ending, but also the psychology of the young girl and what makes her do what she did is interesting. I think the idea of atonement is a fascinating idea.
I think the title of the novel, when you have read the novel, is so moving. It makes me kind of tear up just to hear the title of it because of what you're talking about.
Yeah. Atonement is it's a theological term. And it refers to an action taken to correct or repair damage done by a previous wrongdoing. It could be damage to God or damage to another person.
Right.
So the highest holy day of the Jewish calendar is Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. And for Christians, the idea of Christ dying on the cross for all men's sins and thus atoning for them is a powerful image. And in the book, here is this young girl that you can't she's only 13. So it's hard to really blame her too much, except
the consequences are so great.
They're so severe.
Yeah.
Then there's nothing she can do to bring back those years that he spent in jail, or the separation of Cecilia from her family, or the pains that he goes through in France.
Once she puts them on that path, it can't be atoned in many ways.
How do you atone for something like that? Right. Can she give them those years back?
Yeah.
Can she unruin the lives that she's ruined?
Well, and I'm not going to talk about the ending. You've said that it's a surprise, and it is a surprise. And one of the things I think that is so masterful about this book, this novel, is, mentioning working with my students, if they try to put a surprise ending in. Surprise endings are satisfying when they are indeed surprising, but also earned. They cannot come out of nowhere, right? They feel like they do. But then when you look back, you realize it was there all along, right? Mm-hmm. This possibility of this has, you just didn't see it because you were set down a certain road with the narrative arc and the plot, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Do you share that opinion that the ending is earned? And that is what makes McEwan such a master and this work such a masterpiece, I think.
And one of the ways that it's earned that we can talk about is that Bryony, even at 13, wants to be a writer.
Yes.
She's always wanted to be a writer. And so she imagines stuff. Of course, she imagines who raped the girl, but the book begins where she's looking forward to her cousins arriving because she wants them to act in the play that she's written.
Right, which is the Arabella.
The Trials of Arabella.
The Trials of Arabella. I just watched this movie like 2 weeks ago.
You read about what the plot of this is, and it's something you'd expect from a 13-year-old.
Right.
But it's
especially a 13-year-old of her station.
Yeah.
Right. The kinds of schooling she would have had, the kinds of things she would read.
Yeah. I mean, it's a romance. It's a fairy tale like thing. But when she witnesses what happens between Robbie and her sister, she basically thinks, "Oh, this is trash."
She rejects it.
Yeah.
And she thinks it's sinful, and their tension, their attraction to each other is appalling, and to her, she thinks he's some kind of sex addict.
Yeah,
like
he's a sex maniac.
Yeah.
But it's also that she realizes this is reality. What I've just written is, BS.
Right.
And it changes her perspective on what to write about.
Right. So
since the last part of the book is about this novel that she's written, and I don't think this is a spoiler.
Whenever you say that, you probably shouldn't say the next thing.
Okay. All right.
I would just.
But it turns out that one of the things this novel is about fiction.
Yes.
The writing of fiction.
It is about that, and it is also then about the fictions we tell ourselves. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Because, as her grown self, she maybe is telling herself, I can find a way to fix this.
Yeah.
I can find, I can't let it go until I have atoned. And that's a fiction. There's no atonement for her. She can't do it. They might forgive her, but she can't really
They're not
atone.
going to forgive her.
Right. But you know what I'm saying? Like in terms of the the debt that is owed.
Yeah.
Someone might forgive you even if you can never atone.
And the original accusation is a fiction.
Yes.
And that's a fiction that's harmful. So,
yes.
So fiction can be harmful.
Yes.
But it can also
be healing.
And she's hoping that it will be, but that's a fiction.
Yeah. So it's all these layers of fiction in terms of the written word, her play as a child, her career as a writer, as an adult. As I said, the fictions we tell ourselves, the harm we do other people. And, for her, she really didn't understand the things that she was seeing.
No.
She didn't understand the harm she was doing. She didn't understand what the accusation would do to everyone forever, right?
Yeah.
Not just this week or tonight because it's dramatic. It's forever. And I think that's what's so pitiable, I think, about her as a character, is that she sees things she doesn't understand and acts on them.
Yeah. And thinks she understands what she doesn't understand.
Yeah.
One of the things that we didn't mention because it was a down and dirty summary
it has to
was one of the things that kind of leads her to make that false accusation, which I think she believes it wasn't. She believed that was who she saw.
She wasn't lying.
Yeah.
She talked herself into it because they were pushing her to be certain.
Yeah.
So,
but one of the things that makes her do that is Robbie and Cecilia had a little fight, and he wants to write her an apology before he's invited to their house that night, and he wants to write her this note of apology, and he tries all kinds of ways to do it, and he writes this one where
he writes an obscene note,
which is obscene, just as kind of a joke to himself, and then he types out what he really wants to send, and then he accidentally puts the obscene note in the envelope, and he doesn't take it himself. He gives it to Bryony to give to her sister,
right?
And obviously she's going to read it,
right? And she sees it,
yeah,
which she also doesn't understand.
No.
And in a way, I mean, again, this is a written word, right? It's a kind of fiction because it's
it is a fiction.
It's just a joke. Yeah. And then he writes the real note, which doesn't get read.
Yeah.
The fiction gets read. And again, it's part of that, the snowball, the avalanche that comes. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any reason not to love this book, but why might someone...
it's hard to imagine somebody not liking this. If you are like young Bryony and you don't understand some things and you're really upset by small obscenities,
it's a big one.
You might very well, you might not like this book. I can see parents, insisting that this be banned from schools if you're trying to teach if you're trying to teach it in a high school class or something.
I mean, if I had a teenager, I don't think I would recommend it to a teenager. I think it's a more mature book, but I think you might not like it if you have a more black and white moral code, because this book is about the nuance of atonement. The complexity of atonement, forgiveness, love, all of those things. And there is a great deal of complexity here. And if you're really on the black and white side, this book is might make you uncomfortable, I guess.
And Bryony has that black and white view of morality when she's 13.
Yeah, yeah.
She grows out of it.
Yeah.
As people must.
Right. So before we do the ranking, let's talk a little bit about Ian McEwan. When did this book come out? Do you remember the year?
2001.
Okay. So he wrote it in the late 20th century.
Probably.
Or we know how long books take to get published. Ages and ages.
Not if you're Ian McEwan.
Yeah.
You get published right away.
And his books really range widely. I mean, as I said, I've read a lot of books. His book Saturday, which I think we read aloud too, that's a stunner as well. And that has the Matthew Arnold poem in it, where he basically said he took the Matthew Arnold poem and kind of used it as a map for this novel and Dover Beach. And then I was like, what? And then I went back through it and I was like, there it is. It's all there. Do you know what his inspiration for this was or any?
I do not.
It's hard to know. I think when writers are as prolific as McEwen, I mean, I always have to check Amazon and see if he has a new book out because it seems like every other day he's written a new novel. It seems like they're just in that vein, like they've just tapped into something. It doesn't mean that their novels are easier to write than anybody else's novels, but they kind of know how to take an idea and shape it, right? And I wonder what was the impetus for this particularly, just the idea of the fiction and then the atonement came after, or was it, was he concentrating on, the atonement idea and forgiveness, et cetera, and then used the fiction as a motif? I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah, and I wish I could answer that, but I think Ian McEwan is the only one that can answer that. So we need to get him on the show, Jerry.
But I mean, he is really an astounding writer. That's why it's fun to be an Ian McEwan completist, because the books are so different from each other. I would say there's some similarity in mood, and also they're not long novels. You can read them fairly quickly, but boy, do they stay with you. You just keep thinking about them because the characters are so real. And even though they're short and they're concise, they're incredibly rich, I think.
Indeed.
Have you read a lot of his, or
just
Saturday and Atonement?
And
the one about the robot guy.
Yeah. What was that one called?
I can't remember. That was good. I read a lot of his novel. I can't remember all their names. Anyway. All right. So ranking. So share the ranking with us up to now. I'll do the numbers and you do the titles.
Okay. Catch-22.
Number 1.
Pride and Prejudice.
Okay. That's number 2.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Number 3.
Wolf Hall.
Number 4.
Brave New World.
Okay. That's number 5. So where does this go?
I am going to do something astounding, and I'm going to put this ahead of To Kill a Mockingbird as number 3.
Oh, all right. Excellent. I approve.
All right.
I don't always agree with you.
No, you never agree with me.
All right. So before we sign off, we'd like to say hello to our listeners in Sweden and the Czech Republic. Dobrý den. And we'd like to thank our producer, director.
Oh, you're forgetting something.
Oh!
Chaos Reader!
I am forgetting Chaos Reader. All right. Before we sign off for good this time, I finished a book of poems by Maggie Milner called Couplets, A Love Story. And this book was really interesting to me because this is form. The medium is the message. How I tell my poetry students, that the form needs to be part of the experience of the poem, right? A sonnet is usually about love. If you're going to write a sonnet not about love, I mean, when you go to read a sonnet, love is in your mind, right? I mean, I think that's something that the writer can make use of, even if they're going to subvert it. Okay. This is about her presence in two couples, a relationship that she left for a relationship that kind of surprised her, that, attracted her, and she left one relationship for the other. And it's all couplets. So it's about couples, except for every once in a while, there's a prose poem in it. But
it's a couplet book about couples.
Yes, it's a book of couplets about her life in two separate couples. And this is another thing I tell my students about rhyming, which is incredibly difficult without it being sing-songy or distracting. Like, you'd get distracted by the rhyme and are taken out of the poem. Man, I mean, she is really, really deft with that. And it's a pleasure to read how she does, gets away with the writing the couplet and still never takes you out of the emotion of the poem or the mood or the what's happening and the tension. And so I really enjoyed it. I did a thing for a long time where I asked poets to recommend a book of poems to me. After I would read their book, I would ask them to recommend a book on online somewhere on social media. And now I can't remember who recommended this to me because I forgot to note it down.
Well,
so
maybe they're listening. And
whoever, yes, if you're listening and you recommended couplets
you.
to me, thank you very much. It was lovely. All right. So we'd like to thank our producer, director, creative director, social media manager, technology, IT guy, Jerry Bruno, for making this podcast possible, because you and I both know we could never do it alone.
Have done it. You're welcome.
All right. And we'll see you next time. Between the covers.